you have to learn how to like manage things and make some sacrifices. And that's what that job taught me. And I had to make a ton of those mistakes along the way. It sounds kind of cliche, but it's very good. Like I'm very glad that I did that job and had all those problems. And I can appreciate it now that I don't have to go to work at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I apologize if my bell summoned you.
One of the things I really love about you is, I mentioned it just leading up, chit-chatting before the interview, but I think there is a great genre of what I would consider video game appreciation on YouTube. People just very earnestly loving games and examining them. And I think your lane in that is so interesting. You come at it from so many different angles and all with your own unique perspective. We're going to get to a lot of those things, but one of the things I actually did want to start on was I heard you mention in a recent video that let me know if I have this right. While you were going to school for computer science, you were working at a restaurant in an airport, and
Yeah.
my understanding is the way you described it was so you would go from, I don't know if it was a home or an apartment or whatever. So you would drive to the airport, then you'd walk maybe a mile into the airport. You go through TSA, then you'd go on the tram, then you do your shift, and then you do it all in reverse. Uh, and I guess I have some specific questions on this, but I mean, I'll ask it maybe in just a broad way. I wonder if you could just tell me what your memories are of that job, how long you worked there, that kind of thing. I find it so fascinating because I worked in the restaurant industry myself, so I'd love to hear about it.
Dude, I love it. I love talking to people who worked in the restaurant industry. Yeah. I started off in a restaurant outside of the airport, and then through connections, like the way you get jobs in restaurants or any job is knowing people. So eventually somebody went to the airport, and the benefit to the airport was there was like higher pay. You would make more money as a server, generally speaking, than outside of the airport, because there's just like this consistent traffic loop. Like you get busy at a restaurant outside of the airport around the dinner rush. Weekends might be a little different, but in the airport, it's like when there's a flight, there's a flood of people coming in, and then they're all flooding out at the same time. It was awesome, and it's a cliche to say it was terrible. It just because I don't think I was in the space to appreciate it as much as I should have been in the moment. I was going to school, college at the time. I was working that job. I was like kind of playing around with YouTube at the time. I had consistently been playing around with YouTube since I was a little kid, making like Minecraft videos and stuff. And then I was training. I used to train MMA and boxing. So I was like kind of flirting with the idea of a amateur into professional career in that route. So I had like all of my time divided up between these places. So my mindset at the time when I was working in the airport was like, I don't want to be here because I want to be doing all of these other things like making YouTube videos and training. And that's where I wish I was, but I have to be here so I can afford rent. Yeah. And the whole walking, that was from the SNHU sponsor, which was the college I ended up going to after community college. Um, yeah, the whole walking a mile into work thing came about because they were doing construction at the airport. And one of the first things to get eliminated was employee parking. So then we had to go park with the general airport space parking. And during the summer, people are vacationing. So these lots are full. So I'm finding spots way in the back. In our outfit was black t-shirt and then black jeans. So,
Oof.
and then I have my black backpack on. So I'm just all black walking all the way to the airport. I used to cut onto like a ramp that was connected to a parking garage. So like there's not a sidewalk or anything here. It was just to keep the walk a little bit shorter. And then yeah, you go through TSA. That's not as bad as it might sound once you get used to it. I remember the first day doing that, being stressed out because it's like I have an employee badge, so I'm going to have to cut through a bunch of people, and they're going to be looking like, "What are you doing? Who do you think you are?" kind of deal. But once you have this look of like I belong here, most people are like they don't. It's fine. You're going to cross through, and it doesn't matter when you get used to it. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
it was. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. I mean, I have a bunch of questions on this because like I've always, I mean, just having works. I mean, like like you, and I was when I was going to urban planning school, I worked as a banquet server for like 2 years. And it was, I think a lot of people who worked in the restaurant industry can probably relate in that it was like it is it is kind of horrible in a sense because it's very stressful and it's very fast paced, but also like I think people who gravitate towards the restaurant industry like get some weird kick out of like how intense it is in a weird way. I think we're just wired that way. At least I am. Um, I guess and something you mentioned that I'm curious about. What are the aspects of the job that you appreciate now, looking back on it, that you wish you would have seen at the time?
This doesn't answer that question specifically because I did see it at the time, but let me know if you share this. The people that you
Mm.
work with more specifically. I I came to find this to be true, and I shared this sentiment amongst coworkers at the time, but your coworkers in most restaurants are going to be an incredibly interesting, often struggling group of people. There's this balance that tends to be the case. It's not always, but it tends to be the case that you have younger kids who have this as sort of like a part-time gig, or they might be working more hours, but it's a bridge. And that's always what it was to me. It was a bridge. But then the other half of that is like an older group of them who this is not a bridge to. They feel a bit trapped, like they're paycheck to paycheck more than usual. And one of the benefits of being a server or a bartender is at least a percentage of your pay is in cash at the end of the shift. To pair with that, there is like it seems to be the case. There is a disproportionate amount of addiction in restaurants, at least in my experience. A lot of alcoholics behind the line, and also getting that cash at the end of a shift is something that someone who has a substance abuse problem, they're getting cash at the end of their shift to go buy their drugs. They don't have to wait 2 weeks for this. And this is so consistent with my restaurant experience. So this, as you can imagine, this leads to a very interesting and potentially tense workplace.
Yeah, I mean, I relate to that a lot. I think like, it's an interesting thing. I think I was oblivious to a lot of that stuff when I was doing it, but like, yeah, I mean, the coworkers I had, it was such a range of people. Like I had, I guess I don't necessarily want to say the names, 'cause maybe I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe they'd see this and be like, oh, I don't want to be associated with Bongo anymore. I don't know. But this one guy, this one older gentleman, 60s or 70s or whatever, was so nice and lively and warm and everything. And like my first shift with him, he was telling me about like, oh, my first day here, I dropped a bowl of soup on someone's lap, and I'm like, dude, you're awesome. I love you. Uh, and then he was telling me about like he used to he lived in like Tokyo for 30 years, and I was like, whoa. And then he was like he moved from Tokyo to like there's this town in Washington State called Pullman. It's like kind of I've actually never been there. It's a college town that has WSU, Washington State University, WASU. And he moved from Tokyo to Pullman, so from like one of the biggest cities in the world to a town of like 30,000 people. And then this is like just such an interesting person. And then he also like had people who, looking back on it, had like probably some pretty intense mental health stuff going on. I mean, as did I. Like I struggle with depression a lot, but like, maybe unmedicated bipolar disorder. Like I remember one
Hmm.
woman I worked with, the first time I met her, I think event was like slightly behind because the person I was with was kind of pretty lazy and wasn't very good at it. And she came in like I'd never met this woman before, and she was like she wasn't even working my event. She started yelling at me. She's like, "You're 4 minutes behind." I'm like, I don't know who you are. Uh,
Right.
and then like later I was working an event with her, and like she was so like stressed out all the time. Like I remember we were in the back area, whatever you call it, and she just took a tub of spoons and threw it across the room, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna shut up and
Right.
clear the tables here. Uh so yeah, I mean I relate to that a lot, and it's like I think it's such an interesting firsthand account of just humanity that I think is so unique to the restaurant industry. But and that's actually one of the things that I wanted to ask about, because I think I get this is one of the things that I'm really curious. When I think of restaurants, they can be very close knit. There's almost like a trauma bonding in a sense. And I guess I was wondering, if that carries over to the airport. Like, is it the same culture? Because for some reason, when I think of airports, I think of people just from the experience of like, a customer, consumer, whatever, people going
Mhm.
in and out, viewing it as a very disposable thing. Was it still kind of that tight knit, like, community in terms of the servers there?
I would argue, at least from my experience, even more so,
Hmm.
because the customer base is it's not that you can't have regulars. The bar more had regulars. I did a bit of bartending, but not at our main location. It was mainly a server. And what kind of ends up happening is you don't have regulars, and it's it gets so fast paced. We used to have these sort of jokes about, like, people would say, "Oh, we got a flight to catch," and it's like, "Oh, do you?" Like I didn't know that you're in. Why would you be in the airport? Like, I got a flight to catch. I gotta go. Like, okay, surprise! I had no idea. You and every single other person in here. I think that this sort of tension and the fast pace of, like, all right, now the restaurant is full and now it is empty, led to a very tight bond forming. On top of that, um, I did all the grunt work. I started working in restaurants when I was 16 or 17, so I was host, busser, barback, these kind of positions, and then worked my way up to a server or bartender position. And just as I was getting to that spot, COVID happened.
Hmm.
So we all get laid off, and then we get brought back. And I have no idea why. I was very fortunate. Among all of the more senior bartenders and servers, I was brought back.
Hmm.
I don't know why. I think some of the other servers ended up, I know some of them were from different parts of the country and ended up moving home, and maybe they just didn't want to come back to work at that point, or they found other jobs, whatever it was. But I was then back in the restaurant. We were the biggest restaurant in our airport, and we were sliced into a fraction in terms of staff. So we had the whole restaurant split between two servers. And this was basically when I was just starting to actually serve. So this was like incredibly I was like, oh my God, this is insane. I have like 8 tables bouncing around, and it's this real fast pace. And eventually, because of the stresses of COVID and everything that happened there, we ended up losing our manager,
Hmm.
and then they never replaced the manager. We had three managers operating, because there's like multiple locations in the airport that are all under this one company. And we lost him. They never replaced him. We had a district guy who like oversaw everything, and he was reduced to being a line cook and a dishwasher. He eventually couldn't handle that anymore. Not in terms of title, but in terms of what he was doing on a day-to-day basis. But
Sure,
then he
sure.
still had all of his other responsibilities. So he couldn't, he was like, I'm done with this, and eventually left. And they left us with a line cook as the only actual manager. And I don't know how much I want to share. I won't say his name, but he had a lot going on. He was
Yeah.
in prison before COVID, so he wasn't even working there. Then came back afterwards. He had some real addiction issues. Um, I don't want to say too much
Sure.
more
Yeah,
about
you
his
don't have to.
personal life,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but he had two really intense things happen to him in the middle of it that led to like a severe breakdown of the structure of this restaurant. It eventually ended up closing down. But all of this stuff brought us very close together. All of the servers and bartenders, especially. There would be, we would maybe have one or two line cooks back there. So on one hand, it's like you might be making good money because there's so few servers that, if you serve, the more servers there are, the less tables you're going to get. If there's only two of you, you're splitting a much larger pot. But if you show up to work and there's no cooks there to cook, or there's no, and we never got a dishwasher back after that. So it was just, the dish pit was a pile, an immense pile at the end of every shift that we would like take turns getting through. Yeah, it made it very strong working at the airport. The bond between everybody.
I, you know, One of the things I was curious about, because like I worked in a hotel, like, banquet thing, and so we had like
Hmm.
a dedicated break room where we would go, but like, and maybe you didn't get breaks that often. That's what it would sound like. But like, where did you take your breaks when you were going there? Like, did you go to like a certain terminal, or did you have like, because I imagine you didn't have a break room in the restaurant. Maybe you did, but like, I don't know. Where do you take a break in an airport?
Yeah. if you wanted to smoke, you had to go back to landslide or landside, not landslide, landside. So there were two parts to our airport. There was landside and there was airside.
Hmm.
Which is airside is where you're getting on the flights. Landside is mostly where you're going through TSA. And that tram I was talking about riding back and forth is like what bridged landside to airside. So there are a lot of people in restaurants smoke. Luckily, I did not, so I wouldn't have to go back to landside, but that would lead to tensions rising of like you have people who are chronic smokers who can't get a smoke break because they have to go back to the other side, or if they do, they're gone for so long that the managers are getting mad at them. In terms of taking a break there, like yeah, after COVID and in our staffing situation, there like absolutely no breaks. You're not taking breaks. You get a bathroom break to watch your sections, but there were no, you had slow points and you would sit in the back and you would talk to people.
But
And if it was busy,
there was none of that regulated. You get a 10-minute break here and a lunch break here. That wasn't happening.
no, absolutely not. No, definitely not. It was like after the shifts, because I have these other things going on, like trying to work on the YouTube channel and the other stuff going on and schoolwork on top of that. I would walk into work, but then when work was over, I would run through all of this parking, and like as soon as I got off that tram, I'm taking a jog. We're running back to the car because of that time, because I wanted to get some free time. There were no breaks during that point.
So I mean,
Things were very unregulated, you know.
yeah. I mean, I can. It certainly sounds like it.
What
And
was that like for you with the banquet job in the hotel? Did you
in
have like a specific room you would go to and go chill
mm,
out for a little bit?
yeah, I mean, our well, what's the phrasing I'm looking for? Our thing was it was a little bit less Wild West, because it was kind of an established like hotel, I mean, like it was pretty above board. Like certainly there were days where you'd miss your breaks and all that kind of stuff, but generally
Mhm.
speaking, you would get the lunch break, and we were fortunate that like often, I mean, it's kind of a good and bad thing. Like a lot of times there'd be a lot of food waste because the kitchen would make too much stuff, and like the restaurant would never donate it. Like they wouldn't, because I think maybe it's some liability thing. We would end up just like chucking sometimes like 20 meals a night, and you're like, oh, this doesn't feel great. But
Yeah.
the I guess selfishly, kind of the upside to that is like there's a lot of free food.
Yeah.
So you sometimes sometimes you'd have like 5 minutes between whatever, and you just wolf it down. But generally, what you do is you go down to I guess so. There were a couple different locations. I'm thinking of the main one where we had the ballroom, and those would be like the 400 person events, the big ones, you know. Um,
Oh.
yeah, I'm actually, well, okay, I go on the whole thing. But
Mhm.
so yeah, we would walk through to there was okay. I'm getting like there's so much geography here. So we had like the
Yeah.
banquet kitchen and there was the restaurant kitchen. So we would walk through kind of the restaurant kitchen, down the stairs, and then go to the break room. And you'd pass through like a couple guest areas in the meantime or whatever. But yeah, it was a cool place. Like it was there. I started like kind of like October of 2021, so kind of after COVID, still had some of the distancing kind of stuff going on.
Mhm.
Um, but then like eventually they had like a buffet thing going on, and then there was a soda fountain, and like they had like bagels down there. So a lot better than I think the environment you had. But like generally speaking, I it was kind of an interesting thing, right? Like my until interviews, like not to be too depressing, but I kind of just thought like nobody likes me. And then the first time I realized like people enjoyed talking to me was when I would go like when I 'cause I just started doing interviews because I loved it, and I was just so curious about art, and I really wanted to talk to people who made it and all that stuff. And I was like, I kind of just thought like, okay, well these are gonna suck and no one will like them, and the people who do it will hate me. But I'm like, but I just really want to do it. And then I would go back and watch them, and I'd be like, oh my God, that person enjoyed talking to me. Because in the moment, you're like, oh my God, I'm saying the wrong thing, blah, blah. You have the whole monologue. Um,
Yeah.
so I think when I was working in the restaurant industry, or, banquets, whatever you want to call it, like, I was so, I think because I kind of grew up in an intense environment and the restaurant sort of reminded me of that, and I wasn't aware of this consciously, but like, I think I kind of always wanted to keep people's spirits high. So, I go around making jokes and trying to cheer people up and ask them about themselves and everything. And like, I always just thought I was being super annoying. Like, I always thought I was pissing people off or whatever. But then late, like when I quit or whatever, there were a bunch of people who were like super nice to me and they were like talking about like, oh, you were a great coworker. I was like, what? What are you talking about? I was like, I thought you hated me. Um, so yeah, generally speaking, like I'd like kind of like you, I'd appreciate those people more and would have socialized with them a bit more. A couple of them I did, but generally what I would do was I'd be so exhausted from like the energy of being a server and trying to make sure the other servers were doing all right that like I would kind of go to the break room and I'd just be like, oh my God. And I would generally at that time what I would do is listen to Nine Inch Nails.
Mm.
Yeah, be there for like half an hour, however long it was, just listening to that and be like, oh, all right, here we go
You're gonna
again.
decompress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then like the thing about it was I think some people thought like trying to entertain people or being jokey was my natural state and like I guess to some extent it is. I don't know, that's a whole other discussion. So then like a lot of people would come up and like want to sit with me and talk to me and you don't really want to say like no. But I'm like
Yeah.
but the thing is like dude, I'm so tired right now. Like to me it I guess the same energy I brought to serving is sort of what I do in interviews, I guess. It's kind of a similar skill set, but like it takes a lot of energy and a lot of focus and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if
Does
I
it feel the same afterwards? Does it feel like you're going around? So you're talking about your coworkers. You are going around to your coworkers, starting
mm,
conversations, trying to make people laugh and stuff like that. And then you have this sort of like huge dump. Is
mm.
that a good one? you
Yeah,
know?
I mean, no, I'm totally following you. I think like I'll let's see. I'm trying to think of what the best way to describe this would be. So like, kind of what it would be was I just felt it wasn't a thing where I was consciously like, okay, in order to feel safe in this environment, I need people to like chill out, So I kind of need to like to lift everyone's spirits and make sure everyone's doing all right. Because like the throwing
Mm,
tubs of spoons thing, I don't vibe with that. That does not work for me.
yeah.
Um, so like it was kind of just like a subconscious thing about like I didn't even feel like I was in control of it. It was just like, all right, time to be on and make sure everyone's doing all right. And then I felt like I was being overbearing. So then I would go home and be like, oh my God, why did I do that? Why did I make so many jokes? Like that was so stupid. Why did I say that? That whole thing. So it I think it's while it's a similar impulse in terms of interviews, I think part of it, I mean, I'm now 26 and when I got that job I was 21, right? So I think just maturity and brain development and everything, you have a little more of an understanding of
Yeah.
stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a similar impulse, but I feel a little bit differently about it now because like one of the benefits of doing interviews is that like I know the person wants to talk to me because like they wouldn't have they
They
could
agreed
have
to
said
it.
yeah, they could have said no. Um, so that helps me a lot knowing like okay, this person signed on for whatever carnival ride is happening here. But yeah, I definitely still like it's not as intense because like I don't have the sense of guilt or like shame about it that I did when I was in the restaurant industry. Um,
Mm.
but I definitely do like crash afterwards and I'm like, oh my God. And sometimes I'll sleep for like 15 hours after an interview. Um,
Really? Wow.
yeah, because it's like, I mean, it's gotten a little bit better with time. Like preparing for you, and I know I talked to you a little bit before this. I kind of realized like Gavin seems to be have a pretty calm baseline, so like I wasn't super worried about it. But some people you're like on the fence on, and I'm
Hmm.
rambling on for forever here. But like that was one of the interesting things with Austin was that I didn't get a chance to talk to him before the interview. Like I had set it up with his partner, and then I was like, so I really only knew him from the videos, and I was like. Ugh. So that's kind of one of the funny things, like when you watch that interview, the start of it is so like I just asked about the most random things because I wanted to just throw out the most ideas possible and just see like what resonated because I was like I don't really know who this person is because I've never talked to him before and like I'm getting to know you a little bit more in this moment but I got to talk to you just a tiny bit which is super helpful but like
Hmm.
um yeah I can't remember what started me on that but so it's just uh yeah, it's I think kind of just an environment that is helpful to channel some of the inclinations I had previously into a more constructive way. But I would rambling on about me. So I do have one final question on the restaurant thing, because like when you're
Sure.
working in that intense environment, and you described it very, very eloquently. You run home because you got schoolwork to do, and you're training MMA and boxing. How do you decompress after a shift? I mean, do you decompress, or is it just like go go go? I got to go on to the next thing. Like, how do you kind of come down from that like insane high?
Yeah. Truth be told, funny you say insane high. I developed a terrible relationship with weed when I
Mm,
was working in restaurants. I have like an enormous amount of addiction in my family, and
mm,
during COVID, I forget how it is. Like some coworkers, I started smoking a little bit, and then I got one of those pens, and I had coworkers who would bring those pens into work. You mentioned throwing spoons. I had a coworker that would um, routinely kind of crash out and attack a garbage can, like knock the garbage can over, kick it. Then they would grab the weed pen and go, and then they would grab the food and run it out to the thing, and then they would calm down a little bit, like like crazy stuff. But that was how it was decompressing after work, was just like try like get some schoolwork done. This was like a terrible thing to do, and now at the time,
mm.
like I don't touch it anymore. I know, maybe it's some people, they can handle it, I cannot, and I'm aware of that. um but that was how I was sort of coping with getting done with the shift and trying to balance all this nonsense, and all it was doing was making it harder to balance everything. And uh yeah, and it's like you look back on it, and you can see the little things that you're doing that are helping make a situation much worse. Like
Mm.
even something as small as running out, which sounds insane. Like I'm just running through a parking lot in the dark in an airport. Not a great decision to like sprint through a parking lot. But I just wanted to get home,
Hmm.
and like little things like that. Like, and then I'm going home and I'm smoking a bunch of weed, and I was probably staying up too late, like trying to make the YouTube videos, or working on schoolwork while I'm high, which is probably not conducive to learning much. It was killing my memory. Um, yeah, that was what I was doing. And I didn't stop until I was probably too far out of it. So I don't
Hmm.
have like an alternative, like, um, method or thing that I was doing after those shifts.
I mean, I think that's like I kind of wonder if that's just like a symptom of because I mean the way you described it is I think the restaurant industry in general like really can grind people down and management can be very uh callous, and they're just like, well, just do it, like, yeah, oh yeah, cool. So you don't have a manager, so it's only two of you, so so you need to smoke weed and attack the garbage can. That's fine. Um, and I think like when you're in the moment, sometimes maybe you were aware of it, maybe more, I don't know, but like sometimes I think we can just take it as for granted. But like when you're being subjected to that much stuff, and like it's not your fault that you were put in that environment. You need a job, you need to pay the bills, and this is happened to be the way to do it. But like when you're in that environment, you kind of just you got to find ways to get through it, and I mean, yeah, I totally hear you that like maybe it would have been more productive or better if you did it this way, but like the way I view it, not trying to change your mind about it, but the way I view it is like, hey, you got through it and like you're here now, and like I mean, I'm sure you've seen this. There are a lot of people who go through that and they either they don't get through it or they develop some really hardcore stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so considering like the environment you came from, I'd say you did a pretty good job of it. Um,
It's
well, check.
easy. It's like hindsight is 2020, but um, I think back on it now, and it's like the situation wasn't great, but it also was great. It also was really good on the same note. Like it what that kind of like early work exposure. Like I'm very grateful, not to shit on anybody who did retail. I'm sure you have a lot of stresses in retail and stuff like that, but I'm very glad I didn't do retail. Like I had to learn a lot in this time, and it also taught me at a pretty young age, like drinking, because if you work in a restaurant, and there was a time there at the restaurant where we had a group of young people, and we would get done at the airport early shifts. Like some of my shifts when I was bartending, I had to be in the location at 3:30 a.m. to at working at a whiskey bar. nobody is coming in. I was getting like, I had no idea what sleep paralysis was until I was waking up at 3:30 in the morning after going to bed. I never properly changed my sleep schedule, so 11 at the earliest. I was getting no sleep, staying up all day. Like all of that stuff, it like taught me like, okay, you shouldn't go like drinking a bunch on the weekends and be smoking weed if you want to achieve these certain things. If you want to get a college degree and you want to build a YouTube channel and try and make some things happen that maybe aren't on the standard line, you have to learn how to like manage things and make some sacrifices. And that's what that job taught me. And I had to make a ton of those mistakes along the way. It sounds kind of cliche, but it's very good. Like I'm very glad that I did that job and had all those problems. And I can appreciate it now that I don't have to go to work at 3 o'clock in the morning.
No, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. And like one of the things I've learned just maybe through interviews or whatever is there's no substitute for experience. You know,
Mhm.
like you can tell people like, hey, here's the answer and here's what to do, but like until you go through it yourself and you make the mistakes, like you can't really internalize it. Um,
Yeah.
Gosh, there's so many things I want to ask about. I'm thinking about where to take us next. Well,
Well,
tell
you
you what,
said I want to
please.
mention this. You
Yeah.
said you were talking about your stresses with doing the interviews beforehand,
Mm,
and they're going to be bad, and people aren't going to want to talk to me, and it's going to be a
mm,
bad experience. Um, like, yeah, everything. Like my first YouTube videos, many of them still are bad. Like they're bad. I go back and watch them. I think I said this when we were shooting back and forth a couple of messages. Like when you start doing something, you're going to be bad at it for the most part. Like walking, we're all bad at walking when we first started. You have to kind of build up to stuff. So like your early interviews, I haven't seen them,
sure.
but I would imagine they're not as good as they are now. Like
Yeah.
incrementally, they have they have improved. And I would say the same. Like if somebody, I'm not telling anybody to do this, but if somebody watched my earliest YouTube videos on my channel, which are not my earliest YouTube videos, and then like watch through the catalog, it wouldn't be a linear progression, but we would probably go from down here to like up here somewhere in terms of like, oh, this guy's kind of like getting it more. He's learning how to pace things, and the scripts aren't as bloated and things like that. You got to learn. You got to fail in that process.
Yeah, there's so many interesting pieces to that, and like I could take us down a whole rabbit hole, but I think what you're saying is absolutely true. Well, check out this segue. This is very subtle. What was your experience with video games like during that time? Were you doing a lot of gaming, Gavin?
During the restaurant time period,
Yeah, yeah,
not the sort of yes and no. Like that was that. Okay, so that's maybe my good crash out spot. I was smoking and then I was playing a game and probably not even gathering much from playing that game. That was just like the decompression
yeah.
couple hours that I was getting from it. And honestly, I don't have a lot of fond memories of gaming during that time period. I don't. One, probably because the marijuana was affecting my memory, so I literally don't remember it as much. But two, because I wasn't like just enjoying something. I feel like sometimes stress from one area can just sort of like carry over into another area. So because I was stressed out from going into work, and the stress isn't like, I don't want to overstate it. I wasn't going to like the Vietnam War, like it's working in a restaurant. It's not the end of the world.
Hmm.
It's just like when you don't want to be somewhere and you want to be somewhere else, but you have to be in this place, and then that place also happens to come with a lot of stresses, then yeah, I was more stressed outside of it and probably not enjoying gaming very much.
No, I mean, like, I think, oh gosh, again, there's so many interesting pieces there, but I really think, not to be like too conspiratorial, I think that's like one
Mhm.
of the tricks that like the people who run society have kind of pulled over on us is saying like, well, you
Mm.
don't have it that bad, but it's like, but you're the person
Okay, yeah, I
who
hear you.
makes it suck. You're like, why are you telling me that? It's like, but because you could be making it easier for me, but you're not. You know what I mean? Um,
Well, there's something interesting there. So if we're talking, sometimes I look at things like there's two perspectives on stuff. There's the, and that's oversimplifying, but there's the individual level and then there's systems level. So on the broad systems level, I agree with you. It's not good, and it's often not even useful to like minimize your problems or the stresses of work, or whatever you're experiencing. That's not very useful to do. If you're stressed, then you're stressed, and that's like just the case. But so from the systems level, I agree with you. But from the individual level, I guess I look at that like I don't want to overstate how difficult that was because of what we were just talking about. I thought it was really good, and I was also very fortunate to be in that position, to be serving at that age at the airport where like that was just not common. I was the youngest person amongst my coworkers by far, by a good 20 years generally. I was the kid there, which also had its series of benefits because everyone was like, he's a young kid and we want to impart knowledge on him and stuff like that. You get more grace when you're in your early 20s, generally speaking, from the older coworkers, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh,
Feel free to disagree. Feel
no, no,
free.
no, it's not that. It's more like when it's a tricky thing when I'm like genuinely interested in what someone is saying because it's so easy for me just to like get down a rabbit hole, but then I'm like I also have to do the interview. So it's like
Yeah.
it's a
Well, we can go
conflict.
down rabbit holes, you know. We can go down them.
No, it's just like a conflict that happens in my mind about like like the 40 million things I want to ask about, but then also like my brain being like, I have to make sure this people can watch this and that it makes sense and I'm not just rambling on incoherently. Um,
Mhm.
I actually there's one thing I did want to ask about. I guess taking us back a little bit. Like you mentioned, and I relate to this a lot, that like people might look at your old videos and say the scripts were bloated and that kind of thing. And I think that's one of the elements of YouTube that viewers might not understand is like how important writing and scripting is to it. Maybe not so much for me as an interviewer, but I do monologues occasionally, and I talking to YouTubers, I know this. But I'm wondering, could you tell me like what your maybe your introduction was to writing, or what got you really interested in it? Like, was it just because you're like, well, I need to make videos, so I need to do this, or were you writing stuff in school beforehand? Yeah, how did that come into
Mhm.
your life?
Oh, I had a really awesome English teacher. Um, Her name was, I don't know if I should say her name. I mean, I want to say her name to give her credit, but I don't want to, you know. Her name was Miss Galino. She was awesome. She I would write. We had like argumentative essays, and she was just so engaged with writing notes and reacting to the specific things that you say. I remember we had to write a report or write an argumentative essay as to whether we agreed or disagreed with. I think it was Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 Hours. I think that's the name of the book where he argues that you need 10,000 hours of doing something to become an expert in it. And I don't even remember why, but my young mind was combative, maybe not against that idea, but some other ideas in the book. So I was like, I just got in a mood when I was writing that. I wasn't doing this, I was typing. Um, and I argued against it, and I was like, he thinks this and that. And she was so engaged with everything on the side. And then she would give me a score on my paper, but then I remember she did something and I'm like, oh, she missed this. And I went up and I just argued with her and explained myself, not aggressively argued with her. And she heard me out. We went back and forth a bit, and then she changed my score. And then she would ask me if I thought, and not like condescendingly, she asked if there was like anything she felt, or anything I felt she got wrong when grading my paper. And I like that hit me with like, wow, she cares what I think about this. So that led me to be like honest. It was like, no, you gotta, like, I screwed up here and there and I didn't get that right, and you're right about these grammar mistakes and all that. Um, Something about that. I think I don't know why, but I liked writing a bit. But then her engaging with me on my writing and her little notes and everything just made me enjoy it a lot more. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's so amazing, and I relate to that. Like I have different teachers who had a similar effect on me, and I think that's one of the really unsung aspects, unsung heroes that didn't work grammatically, but you know what I'm getting at. Like I think that's
Mhm.
really an important part of someone's development as an artist is like, because no matter who it is, pick anyone, Shakespeare, Kurt Cobain, any of these like generational legends, even them, like at some point they were doing it for the first time and they probably sucked at it, and like if someone had come along and been like, hey William, you suck at this, he'd be like, oh, okay, well, who knows what would have happened. So I think it's so important to just in those early stages of development have someone who is interested or who is maybe not overly flattering, but like is seeing what you're trying to do or listens to you or
Hmm.
engages with the ideas you're trying to present. Like I think that's such an important part of someone's development just as an artist. But I did want to ask about this because I think there are so many different subjects that you cover in your videos, news bias and
Hmm.
quality of life and transportation networks and all these really interesting things that I'll dive into more. But I'm wondering, like, what are your influences in terms of writing? Does it differ from video to video? Are you channeling different things, or is it like a consistent list of like these are the texts that I'm going back to?
Yeah. No, there aren't a ton of influences. I think something I try and match the topic with music that I will listen to while I write to try
Hmm.
and get into a certain headspace. And this is something that I'm doing more and more as I get into it. And I try and do more, like there's the risk I'm running the risk of the video being very cringy potentially if I don't go like all the way in on the sort of storytelling that I'm trying to get to. And maybe it is. Maybe there's definitely that chance, but I'm like it's I think it comes more from the music that I listen to. I would like to read more. I have a little library of books over to my right, but I spend most of my time now, like right now, I'm reading through a source book for Fallout called The Winter of Adam. It's information that is for the game, but it's not in the game. So I think there's like an interesting thing here for a video. And I have a notes page that is currently it's a little over 7,500 words of me just like writing all of this stuff down, like fire hose type information just right into my face, and then I'll get into the scripting. I don't have like
No,
I
well,
couldn't think of a specific like writer or book that is inspiring me. It might be stuff that I'm listening to, um, maybe in terms of like YouTube videos or podcasts or things like that might be having more of an influence. But I couldn't draw a direct one.
I mean, absolutely, and I think that's so interesting. Is I relate to different aspects of that myself. Like in order to well, not to ramble on too long about myself, but I think like in order to get into a state where I can do interviews, like it's not, I don't want to make it sound like I'm being insincere because like I mean all of the things that I'm saying, but it's like I'm a very awkward person. And like in order to be able to do this kind of thing, like I have to really psych myself up and there's like adrenaline and there's certain music I listen to depending on the mood and the person I'm talking to, all this kind of stuff. So I relate to that a lot. And I guess what I'm interested in is like how do you and maybe this is I don't know maybe I guess maybe it's too hard to put a point on, but how do
Hmm.
you break down? Okay, let's just take an example. So your last video as of recording was the one Cyberpunk on prisons, which I think a
Hmm.
great video that I do have more questions about later. Like what
Sure.
what was the soundtrack like when you were researching writing that one?
Darker stuff, and it's often going to be stuff without uh, um,
Lyrics?
vocals, without yeah,
Yeah.
without lyrics, because I can't sit there and write and then listen to somebody else singing in the background. And the thing
Mm.
is, like Spotify has opened up what I listen to so much, but it also destroys any familiarity I have with artists because everything is like, oh, it's just on Spotify, and then I save it and I don't even know the song name and I don't even know the artist's name. I just have the music sitting there. Actually, okay, so the I don't know that people are going to know this artist, but it's Ambit.
Hmm.
They make ambient music, and two songs, Ride Away and Levitate. They're very like he makes very melancholic stuff. I've actually been going back and forth with him on Instagram to see if I
Oh,
can
I
like maybe
love
get
that.
some of his music in the videos because
That's
it's
awesome.
not super well known, but I think it's incredible. And it's just like, if I want nothing more than to like get the music that puts me in the place to write this stuff, to get that in the video, because then it's
Oh,
like, well, we have this, it's coming together. You know what I mean? Like everything's coming together in the right way, I feel.
I think that's absolutely amazing. So, okay, well, that's so cool. But so it sounds like okay, so we're throwing out most of the stuff with vocals, and I understand why, I understand the inclination. So we're
For
left,
while I'm writing,
yeah,
it's not that I don't listen to stuff with
totally,
vocals outside of that. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So within the writing process, so we're going to be dealing with ambient music, maybe soundtracks, scores, maybe.
Hmm.
So and then
Yes.
so is it just you're going by tone at that point? So like if it's maybe okay. Like let's say you're doing a video on the transportation network, whether it be, the highways don't make sense, or, here's the
Hmm.
subway system, or whatever it is. Do you what does something like that look like? Is it more like kind of craftworky, like logical type, like beeps and
Yeah.
boops?
Yeah, yeah, that one, I mean, that could be like the Stardew Valley soundtrack and ambiance playing in the background. That one doesn't take the same kind of, um or I'm not looking for the same kind of tone in music to it. Cyberpunk just draws more of that out. Even some of the Cyberpunk uh, soundtrack. And there's a
Mm,
bunch people, I don't know that people know this, but there are so many soundtracks from Cyberpunk that aren't on the OST. You have to go
mm,
find them like ripped on YouTube. Some of the best music from that game is
huh,
not on the official soundtrack. It's incredible. There's like really really good music out there
huh.
for that game.
Yeah.
And people are going to be like, "Oh yeah, I remember hearing that during a mission," but then you'll never find it on the soundtrack, which I'm like, "Oh, come on, put that out. Put that out so people can find it." Um, but that's one of the benefits, I guess, of like paying a bunch of attention to this kind of stuff and going through the missions, and like the crucifixion mission in that prisons video you're talking about is a great example of that. That music that's playing in the background, that's almost like this weird melancholic choir type thing going on, that's not on the soundtrack. But I was listening to that on repeat the entire time I was writing that script, almost just like kind of drowning in it. There's like an hour and a half long video of it on YouTube, just repeating. And then I was like rewinding to keep listening to it as I wrote. Um, and sometimes the timing matters as well. So that video was one that I was happy to stay up into the night writing. You get into a, I don't know if everybody's like this, but I feel like you get into a weird place at night. Sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and being like, what were you doing? But then as the day goes on, I'm like, never mind, this is great. This is really good. Let's not, don't throw this away. That's like a rule I have to give myself, is like, a lot of good creative stuff comes out of me at night when I'm a little bit tired and maybe my inhibitions are lowered. And then when I wake up in the morning, it's like, don't throw things away right in the morning just because you wake up with this like, oh, that's weird. Just get rid of that. Like, no, keep that stuff. A lot of stuff that's in my videos would probably be gone if I listened to the morning voice too much.
Ah, that's so rad. Well, it reminds me, I guess I'm name dropping slightly, but one of the before I did interviews on YouTube, I did interviews for little zines. I think I had I don't know, like four or five ish interviews before YouTube, and that's I also I'm getting on the whole rabbit hole. I wrote an article about like Fallout New Vegas modders that no one wanted to publish, so it never went anywhere. But
Oh,
like,
oh,
yeah,
we have things to chat about. Let's go.
I interviewed like different modders just on like Nexus Mods, the message thing through that. So I guess technically that was my first interview. Anyways, during that like pre-YouTube stuff, I talked to William Basinski, who I don't know if you know him, but like an experimental ambient composer. He did like do you know disintegration loops? Um it
No, maybe if I
no yeah.
saw it, I'm not sure.
No, no, no,
Yeah,
no,
go ahead.
no worries at all. I'll send you some stuff after the interview. I think you'll really like him. But one of the
Sure.
things he mentioned was that he kind of uses ambient music, and he's a really unique person. It was really cool getting to talk to him because there's exactly one of William Basinski,
Mhm.
as with many great artists. But anyways, he mentioned that like ambient music and the stuff he makes kind of helps him get into like what he calls a bubble of eternity, and he like his ideal would be if the music could just go forever, and and he gets kind of annoyed that a CD can only hold an hour of music, you know. Um, so I guess it just the more I do this, the more I find like I think different people are kind of they take bits and pieces. Like I think a lot of humans come to similar places, in certain ways. Like I
Yeah.
think it sounds like you have a similar thing about like let's keep this gravy train going. Let's do this 3, 4, 5 hours, same song, doesn't matter. And I
Yeah.
guess one of the things I'm really curious about with that, excuse me, he mentioned that like Cyberpunk especially, you kind of got to get into like a certain headspace, or you have to get that extra thing to get you there as compared to like some of the more maybe Fallout or some other things. I
Yeah.
guess I'm wondering like do you think there's part of that, I don't know what you want to call it, but having to make that like leap in mentality, do you think that like kind of gets you stoked to do Cyberpunk videos sometimes?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It is. Based on my channel, like the image and the name and everything, it seems Fallout-esque, but Cyberpunk has just taken that spot in my heart by
Hmm.
far. It the everything that comes together from the I have a stack of the source books sitting over here. I'll do my little show and tell. I bought a bunch of the source books on Cyberpunk that the whole world is based on because
Hmm.
I want to read into every little bit of it.
Ah,
There's just so
love it.
much writing behind it. And then what CDPR is doing in terms of like bringing the world and the music together, obviously they're working in conjunction with Mike Pondsmith, the writer, and Artel Sorian. I think that there's a some collaboration there. It's just so substantive, and the music on its own helps at least illustrate in my mind what kind of world this is. Like it's heavy music, whether it's like really aggressive, fast-paced stuff, or it's the more like ambient, like dark, brooding stuff. And then there's really emotional music. And then that's reflected throughout the game with all of the different themes and the interpersonal relationships. And then, this sort of like this dystopian world. It's not sort of, it's incredibly dystopian. Um, I don't know. It just has so much to say, and the music helps sort of echo what it's saying. I think it's awesome.
Oh gosh, I love that. And like, I get this is the frustrating thing about interviews. There's so many questions I want to ask, and like, there's so many directions I could take it, but I can only pick one of them. Um,
Yeah.
you
Analysis
know,
paralysis.
little bit, and that's kind of one of the things I learned early on was that like, it doesn't. You kind of like, what's the phrasing I'm looking for? Um, Maybe if I went back and thought about it, I'm like, well, I should have gone down that one. But it's like you kind of just have to do the job and make sure you're not. I can't just sit here for 30 seconds and be like, wait, Gavin, let me think. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess I could, but I would.
There's
Anyways,
something interesting here. Can I take us? I want to.
sure.
This is a
No,
selfish
please,
path
please.
that makes me think of something in my mind. So, and I'm longing for it because I haven't been training in maybe a little over a year, which is the longest break I've taken from MMA.
Hmm.
And what you're talking about is like it's like mixed martial arts, and there's always this weird thing in my head of dealing with the like it's like brutal cage fighting, and then people hearing like mixed martial arts and it's like, oh yeah, it's an art, yada yada. But what you're talking about is like so relevant to like if you have to spar where you're fighting somebody. It's practice, it's training. It's not a full on fight. You're not trying to kill somebody, but you do have to actually engage in the fight. And something that newer people always deal with is like this analysis paralysis. Like there's so many options in front of me, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should like throw the jab in the right hand, or if I should kick, or if I should take. They just freeze. So there's this certain level where you're so green and new that you can't really spar until you get more comfortable just like throwing shots and like going forward with something. And there's like that taught me a lot, like the parallels between that and the other elements of life. Mixed martial arts is so cool because you'll have parallels between the different arts that you're learning. You're learning boxing, and then you're learning jujitsu, and you're learning Muay Thai, and then you have to bring it all together. And you can sort of do this analogous learning between them, where it's like, okay, well, that's things kind of work like this in boxing, and they also kind of work like that in jujitsu, oddly enough, even though they're so separate. And then you go to YouTube or interviewing or whatever. It's like I have that with YouTube sometimes, less so now, but early on, it was like there's so many things to make. I don't even know where to begin. And my videos, I think, were bloated because it's like was trying to learn how to like tighten things up, and I still have to rein that in, because from the creator's perspective or the interviewer's perspective is different from the viewer's perspective. What is like the most effective way to translate things over to them? So I wanted to go on that little side
No,
tangent because I see so
I
many
love it.
parallels between them.
Well, and I think I relate to a lot of what you're saying. I mean, I haven't trained in martial arts, but I think in my experience, like the way how do I phrase it? I'm grateful to you for opening this up, because it's so esoteric the way I think about it that like I wouldn't have thought like anyone would understand it. But like the way I try to view it, and a lot of this, frankly, pretty much. I feel like people don't believe me when I say this, so I repeat it over and over so people understand I'm being serious. Like the vast majority of, well, maybe not the vast majority, but like most of my success in life, I owe to the soccer anime Blue Lock, and like to the extent that I'm successful at stuff, I pretty much owe it all to that story, that manga, that the anime, all that kind of thing. Um, and one of the things I guess I learned from that, well, I could go on the whole thing. Okay, I'll describe it this way. I guess I'm taking this totally off the Blue Lock thing, so people aren't gonna understand why I brought that up. But in my mind, it makes sense, and if someone comments, I'll explain it. But what I try to do is I try to just quickly envision all of the futures that are possible, and I try to think about like what my skill set is, and like what is the option that I can be most likely to succeed in, and it's kind of like I had to learn that early on. I can't think of a specific example, but like I I never ask a question about something that I can't field the entire range of answers to in the follow-up questions, because like if I were to ask you about blah, 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 I don't know, some very like it's totally off top of my head, some like very technical boxing question, then like if we
Mhm.
go down that trail, then I'm like, well, I'm not gonna, that's kind of a dead end for me. Not that I'm not interested, but I don't know enough about it. So like I
Right.
kind of got to make sure to stay within the range of things that I'm interested in, things that I know how to talk about, things that I can answer questions about, that I can seem at least somewhat intelligent on, you know? And I kind of try to apply that to like every aspect of my life. Like I think about, when someone asks me to do something, or I'm thinking about applying for different jobs or whatever it is, um, I think about like, okay, let's say I got this thing, like, is that something that I'm going to be able to maximize my, can I use my skill set within that to achieve the goals I want to do and all that kind of stuff? And it's tough. I mean, like that's part of why like I crash after interviews, because it's like the amount of, I don't have it so much anymore, but like especially the early ones, I would literally black out. Like I don't remember doing them. Like and I'll go back and watch. I mean, the interview with Austin, for example, there are like 20-minute sections of it that I'm like, I don't remember saying any of those things,
Wow.
because
Yeah.
you're just like, it's so, the amount of stuff that's going on in my brain is like so exhausting. And that's
Is
actually,
this is this
go
is
ahead.
this thing that you're doing intentional, or is it this is like, because it sounds limiting, right? If you're applying this beyond the interview space, like you want to engage with things that you can sort of fill out more fully, that you can expand within, that you already have a skill set for. But
Mm,
isn't that a bit limiting? Doesn't that stop you from trailing into a territory where you have the ability to gain
hmm.
more skills?
I I follow I know exactly what you mean. I think it could. And I think it's kind of just like if it, how do I describe this? When I think about like the human mind, I think about it like an MMO slider thing, like when you're designing a character, like kind of everyone has, like some people they're super selfish, some people are super selfless, some people are sadistic, and some people are masochistic, like like everyone has the sliders set somewhere. So if my sliders were slightly different, I think it could end up in that way. The thing with me is I'm never satisfied, and it's also an ADHD thing. Like I have like an addiction to information. I need to be learning new stuff like constantly. So
Mm.
it's I find it helpful, because it's I'll give you an example. So I've talked about this in different videos, but like I was working as an urban planner and I quit that job like 14 months ago or something. So I'd saved up a decent amount of money working as a server, and then I basically just don't spend money, so I kind of just put it all in a bank account. So like I had a good amount that I could be fine for a couple of years, and just not I'm not talking I couldn't fly first class and be eating at restaurants every day, but like just paying rent and groceries, I'd be fine for a year or
Right.
two, you know. Um, so I was kind of like, all right, I love art. I really want to make stuff. I'm just gonna figure out what I want to do. And interviews kind of just happened to be the thing in front of me, and then different things. But like there was a time period where, and I still get like pretty depressed, and I'm like, oh, the interviews suck. They're never gonna go anywhere. Blah blah blah. I'm totally guilty of that. I go down that rabbit hole frequently. But like there are times where that'll happen. Then I'll be like, okay, maybe I'll be a stand-up comedian, or like maybe
Mm.
I'll, I think like maybe I'll need to start over, and like my life will be about this thing. So it, it definitely, the way I view it is that it kind of helps me to stay the course a little bit and be able to be like, okay, what is it that I want to achieve right now? What is the most important thing for me to do? And what like I know I want to be learning new stuff. I know I want to be applying myself, doing all these different things, and how do I fulfill that desire to keep learning everything without totally derailing stuff and starting from zero every year? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Uh,
Because I, sorry, please go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't going to go, but I do have a lot of thoughts on that. That's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of like you want to you don't always know what's coming next. What you just said about having to start over resonates pretty heavily with me because I started doing YouTube while I started taking YouTube as like I'm going to try to do this as like my full-time job while I was kind of getting close to finishing up my degree and realizing I don't want to do computer science. I don't want to be a software engineer. That's what I was doing before I started going towards YouTube. Um, and like I guess in that process you kind of I'm doing YouTube but I'm just like floating off into the ether. It feels like sometimes like I'm not attached to a salary. Even if I get laid off at that salary position, I can't then like parlay that into another company or go do something else. I'm just making videos and it's working out right now, but it's not consistent. There's no guarantees in anything, but especially doing YouTube. But then sometimes I remind myself like sometimes you're doing something in life and you don't exactly know what the next thing is going to be, but once it's there, and as long as you keep plugging away, there's no guarantees, but as long as you keep plugging away, it might make sense when you look back on it
Mm,
like, oh, this is how I ended up over here. It comes to mind off the top of my head is one of the YouTubers I've enjoyed a lot over the years is Johnny Harris. He
mm.
makes the sort of like
The maps video, the
journalistic.
guy, I think, or
Yeah, he makes a lot. He used to work for
yeah, I know
Vox,
who
and
you're
now he
talking
does
about.
his
Yeah, yeah,
own.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he makes a lot of like history or looking into economics, and it's like a journalism thing. And from what I understand of his stories, he started off doing like having a real passion for journalism, like
Mm,
investigative journalism.
mm.
And I'm sure early on he didn't think like I'll be an enormous YouTuber one day, but then along the way now he has, I don't know, he has like 7 8 million subscribers. Everything he uploads gets over a million views, a couple million usually. um like he probably didn't know he was going to be a YouTuber at some point when he was following the journalism thing, but he got really into the journalism thing, and then it led to the next thing. So that's sort of like it's stressful, but it's important to think like that, like you're stacking skills. So I get what you're saying there.
No, I mean I agree with that absolutely, and I think like honestly that's like one of the biggest things I learned from sports anime, and that's like one of the things that really changed my life was just like,
What does that mean? What does sports anime? Is it like what it sounds like? It's an anime about
oh,
sports.
yeah, yeah. So like the two big ones are, and well, don't tell me with a good time. I could talk about this for quite a while, but
Okay.
the two big ones are Blue Lock to me. The two big ones to me are Blue Lock, which is a soccer anime, and like kind of the thesis of that show is basically it's all like the term they use is ego, like the basic okay, ah, sort of the central tenet of that show, I would say, is that like in order to be the best striker, goal scorer in the world, you have to be the world's biggest egoist, you know?
Hmm.
Um, And that's one of those things, like, I think it gets a bad rap because people hear the word ego and it brings different things to mind. But like, I really think that that's true. Like in my experience with interviews, for example, um, there have been times where like I connected with, and I have a specific person in mind. I don't want to name them, but like I connected with someone early on in my interviewing time before YouTube, um, that I was a big fan of, and like I did a great job at the interview, but then afterwards I was getting the whole thing about like, oh, this sucks, blah 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 blah. The person didn't like me, and I kind of ended up like ruining the relationship a little bit because I was being cringe. I wasn't really being myself. I was being like too performative. And when I
Hmm.
thought about it, and it still kind of busts me up a little bit to this day because I still feel guilty about it, and I still really respect that person, and I wish I could. No, it's not like I did anything terrible, but it's probably like they're going to be less likely to return my emails now just because I was like a little kind of cringe. But like the issue there was that I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I was on the level to talk to this person. And that was the thing. I was like, okay, well, I'm never going to make that mistake again, And I
Yeah.
mean, like in not I don't want to I could tell you after the interview, but like in within the next month or two, like there are going to be some names in the channel that are like, whoa, and that I've been talking to in some cases for like a year trying to set it up. Um, and that was a big moment to me about like, even though I still view these people like, holy shit, why are they talking to me? Like, this is one of my heroes. This is crazy. But like at the same time, you got to be like, nope. I'm just doing my job. This is totally normal. I totally deserve to be here. Even though internally, like, I don't think that way at all. I'm like, that's crazy. They're talking to me. Why is this happening? But you just never show that. You're always like, yeah, man, I'm hot shit. I totally deserve to be here. But that and like the one I'm totally getting this far afield at this point, but the one I would recommend to you is there's an amazing boxing anime called Hajime no Ippo, which and I can send you the details on this, but like I
Yeah.
think is just one of the like best stories that the human race has ever made because the basic premise of it is that it's this kid, he's in high school, 16, 17 years old, and he's getting bullied and all this stuff, and he works with his single mom at like their fishing boat rental service. It's very like slice of life in a way, like he's just kind of an ordinary schmuck. And then like, one day as he's getting bullied, like this boxer comes by and like kind of beats up the bullies and is like, "Hey man, what's going on?" And like he brings him to the boxing gym and like shows him like how to throw a punch, and they're like, "Oh wow, you're pretty good at this." And then
Hmm.
I feel like I'm rambling on too long, but like the one of the great moments of the show, and this is just the first episode I'm giving you, so I couldn't recommend the show highly enough. It's just the first episode.
Hmm.
Ippo is his name. He's like, oh, well, I want to become a professional boxer. And the guy's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, do you have any idea how hard it is to do this? And he's like, no, yeah, like I thought about it a lot. I want to do it. And the guy's like, okay, kid. So then he goes down to this like tree by the river and he bumps it and then goes like and catches 10 leaves. And he's like, all right, kid, if you can catch 10 leaves in a week, then then sure, I'll let you become a boxer or whatever. And he's thinking like,
Right.
okay, I'm never gonna see this kid again. Um, and then like, yeah, and it becomes a whole thing where he's like the entire week he's like obsessively like, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna figure out how to do it. And
Hmm.
the reason, among many reasons, that particular story, even just that moment of that story, was so relevant to me. And I'll tell you after the interview. I guaranteed when people see the interview, they'll know who I'm talking about because it'll be a
Hmm.
big jump up. But there was one person who I connected with close to a year ago, um, and I reached out to him initially, and it was a thing about like, hey, I'd love to interview you. Here's what I have in mind. And he was like, okay, I don't really want to do interviews, all this kind of stuff. And he gave some reasons, and I was like, all right, that makes sense. Thanks for taking the time to explain. I really appreciate it. And a couple months later, I was like, hey, I've thought about it a lot. I think I would still love to do it. Here are the things I have in mind that I think might address what you're talking about. And like I talked about, like I think I'm a great interviewer. I think I do a really good job at this. And then he was like, I kind of felt like he was trying to just get rid of me a little bit. Not judging him at all. He was like,
Hmm.
all right. You know what? If you're still doing this in a year, then maybe I'll have something to talk about. And I was like, that was an immediate moment to me. I was like, all right, man, I got it. I was like, I'm
Just
on.
like that show.
Exactly. That's literally the first thing that came to mind. So like those two stories are really what I owe much of my success to. Um, so yeah, that's I would recommend them very highly. Uh, gosh, I took us off on on a whole thing here. Um, you know, let me think. 'Cause I got to. You know what? Actually, this is totally not related to anything, but I guess just on the
Mhm.
subject of like fighting, I looked down and I saw it, and I was curious about it. I was just curious why the quote from Fight Club. I'm curious why that was the thing you chose to put in your bio. I wonder if you could tell me about what that line or what that movie means to you.
What is it? What
You
do I
met me
have
at
that? I
a
switched that
you
out.
met
Oh,
me
you
at a
met me at
very
a very
strange.
strange time in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I switch what is there out pretty regularly because it's just like a weird little place, and I feel like the vast majority of people never look at that spot on a channel. So I have tucked in different movie quotes. I think the last thing I had in there was from a recent Wes Anderson movie called The Phoenician Scheme. What was it? It was something like um, myself. I feel very safe. I don't know. It's just like
Yeah, you
something
cycle different
about.
quotes though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, actually, this is just the second one. Before that, I
Hmm.
had something else. I don't even remember what it was. I think it's more that I like Fight Club, and I like that quote, and that is about as far as it really goes. like, like you met me at a very strange time in my life. I,
It's just a
I
great
I've
line.
said
Yeah.
it is a great line of. I said that like I showed my wife that movie. She had never seen really anything like that in that space of movies, and that quote just like it felt true for me to her. It was a strange time in my life, and it probably is for anybody who's in their early 20s, like cycling through what they want to do. Um, and I still feel it. Like this is a very strange time. I am now what is it? We're in August. I am now a year and 8 months into treating YouTube full time. I think I quit my job maybe March or April, probably April of 2025. I was doing like tech support. I was getting over into the tech world, which was going to probably be help bridge me after I finished my degree. Um, so yeah, it's just a weird time in my life. So anybody who reads that, that is true of me, but it's also a quote from a movie I like.
I love that. Gosh, I talking to you is so much fun, and like I've gotten you're so easy to talk to. I've gotten through like five of my questions because I'm so just like there's so many follow-ups I have, and hopefully if you need to run at any point, definitely let me know because I'm happy to talk to you for as long as you're available.
I'm good. I'm hanging out.
Hell yeah. Tell you what, I'm trying to think about where I want to take it. You know what? I'll ask this one. This is I guess kind of a random one. Something I have found is that like I was playing a bit of Cyberpunk just kind of leading up to this interview because generally what I try to do is I try to like put myself in the shoes of the person and like consume the same media as them, and it's different for different people. But for you, I got the impression Cyberpunk was taking a lot of your interest recently, so I thought, okay, I'll dive into this and try to think through Gavin's perspective on this. But one of the things I found playing that game is I hate the loot system. Like I despise having to look at all the bodies because like
Oh my god. Yeah.
the way I'm playing the game is I don't like thinking about stuff. Like I don't want to have to be like, oh, what are the consequences of my actions in this game? So I just go in and I shoot everyone and then I leave the room, you know? Um so I hated dealing with the looting. So I got this mod that just I set it to loot exactly what I want, and then I walk in the room, I kill the people, it loots everything, and I move on.
Yep.
Which I just absolutely love. And I guess I'm wondering, like, when you're playing games, do you find yourself being like, I wish this was different, this was different, this was different? And then do you ever tinker with it in terms of modding or whatever? Like, I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely, but not in the same way. I don't know. I just my relationship with games have changed a lot as I've gotten older. When I was younger, I would say no. I definitely modded a lot, but I modded because I like the idea of adding to the experience, maybe customizing it a bit. I remember using a similar mod like that for The Witcher 3 that sort of like auto looted things. Um, God, if that's not an issue, but like potentially an issue with a lot of RPGs, is like you kill all these people, and then there's that part of the game where you're like looking through their inventories. And I've noticed especially with like Fallout 4, for example, I will be looting while I'm fighting. And it's like if there's ever a way to destroy the tension or any of like a combat in a game, it's like I can't even be bothered with you shooting bullets at me. I'm trying to loot your friend for all of his stuff. It is kind of terrible. I don't know how you fix that exactly, because a part of the fun of more so Fallout is like, especially Fallout 4, is like grabbing all the loot and I'm going to take this back to my settlement and build things up and customize my weapons or whatever. Um, yeah. So the question is, are there things that I would that I like or dislike about games that I would want to change through mods?
I guess I'm just wondering in a more general sense, like I
Uh-huh.
think I am probably on one extreme that, like, frankly, what I would like, and this is insane to say, but like I kind of wish I could just be the game director of every game, so that, because like in my mind that would mean they're perfect. uh and then on the other side of that, you have someone like Austin who's just like, whatever they did, I love it and I'm happy with it and it's amazing. I guess I'm just wondering, like, where in that continuum
Mm,
do you place yourself, if at all?
mm. Definitely neither of those ends. With your end, I feel like I could not. I would have such a hard time enjoying the game if I made it or if I was responsible for it. Like that would be an entirely different level. Like I don't watch anybody's videos in this little niche that we're in.
Hmm.
Um, it's I don't. There's a multitude of reasons for that.
Hmm.
Not that I think it's bad, but it's just one. I'm not really into it from the viewer's perspective. It's more of like I want to make this stuff. I don't want to watch this stuff. I'm
Hmm.
genuinely not very interested in watching it. Which might be kind of strange, but it just changes like my relationship with it. So if I were to make the game, I would be thinking about how do I make all these cool moments and make people feel a certain way and think a certain way and how can they enjoy this and things like that. Whereas if you're playing the game, it's totally different. Like you're receiving the information. Like the moments that are happening to you are like there's just it's completely different. You're like interested in watching the world kind of open up to you, especially with the open world games we're talking about. But there are also times where like the Austin end of thing that you're talking about, where you're saying like he'll like anything that's in a game. It is what it is, and
That's
I enjoy it for what it is.
that is my impression of him. Yeah, it seems like he's very
Yeah,
just like, whatever they did, I love it.
yeah. In theory, that sounds nice, but I know when I'm playing a game, there are absolutely moments where I'm like, all right, enough of this shit. Like enough of this. Like whatever is going on in that moment, or just like there's elements of games or times in games where I think the story or the world just isn't interesting, and that takes me out of it. Something there is like what comes to mind there is when you look at franchises that have existed for a long period of time and have many different iterations within them. Grand Theft Auto is a good example of this. I'm playing through the original trilogy right now, but in the pockets of time that I have, and I finally got to San Andreas. Now I had like played a ton of Vice City when I was a kid, but I never played the story. I just like it was fascinating to me that you could do something in that world and then like cops will come after you. Like that blew my mind when I was a little kid. I would go over to my friend's house and we would basically just like rob stores and then the police come after you and then you deal with that. That was more interesting to me than quests. But for example, like in San Andreas, there's this whole gang territory thing, and you have to go take territory from other gangs. And I love that. That's like nice downtime in between missions. Because when a game is just like full on, like we're just doing mission after mission after mission after mission, it might work a little bit better in like a linear story. But for something open world like Grand Theft Auto 5, it got kind of exhausting. And so now I look at Grand Theft Auto 5 entirely differently. I'm like, why did we get rid of this gang territory system? Like, I feel like the game suffers because of it. I want something like this to sort of fill that void. So I'm not just like, you end up doing this thing in open world games. I'm sure a lot of people can resonate this, where you're just like, you click on the map and it's like, okay, follow the fucking line. And then we do the story. And then you follow the fucking line. And then you do the story again. Like, as much as we'd all like to just walk around in a game world, that's probably not how most people are experiencing games. And I feel like stuff like the gang territory type stuff in San Andreas, I really like that. I'm like, man, why did we get rid of that? That was I feel from my playing experience, that was just a bad decision later. And there's, Fallout is another one that fits into this. It's funny when you think about Fallout. I don't know how far you are, how much you like
I played a
Fallout or
good bit
follow
of
the
them. Yeah.
series.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The community is known for being incredibly divided, to say the
Mm.
least. And then when you look at the games, they have almost always either been made by different development studios, or there is an enormous amount of time between when those development studios worked on the games. You go from Fallout 1, Tim Kaine and the leadership there ended up leaving in the middle of Fallout 2, I believe. Tactics and Brotherhood of Steel are made by completely different people. Then Bethesda gets it. And then Obsidian, comprised of some of the people who worked on the original, come back and work on it again. And then, like, almost a decade later, Bethesda's back at it. And then Fallout 76, made by another studio that's not the main studio at Bethesda. It's like all over the place. So it makes sense that the community is incredibly divided. And like I have a particular preference as to what Fallout looks like, and it doesn't look like that anymore. So
Mm.
that impacts how I experience some of the newer titles. There are elements of like Fallout 4 that I really like, but then there's elements of it that I'm like, we really lost something good, and it's been a long time since New Vegas, which is probably the area of the world that I like, and I, I just have to accept that it's not that anymore.
Mm.
But it's pretty hard when you're playing something within the same IP, and it's like it's just not that thing anymore. We've lost that. So as much as I'd like to be like Fallout 4 is its own thing in its own world, the comparison game is like unavoidable for me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and like I relate to that so much, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying vis-a-vis New Vegas and Fallout 4 especially. But well, you mentioned the idea of working on games, and I guess I don't want to just ask you like, would you like to be a game dev? Because that's kind of boring. But I thought of like a couple different positions, ideas, whatever in the development space. I'd love to just bounce them off you, see if they're if any interest, if they pique any sort of reaction at all. So like you have the cyberpunk news videos, and like
Mm.
would you be interested if someone approached you like, okay, all right, Gavin, we want you to be the news anchor in our universe, whether it's cyberpunk or something else. Is that something you jump at?
Oh, that would be so cool. I think I would be terrible at it because it would be the first time I had done something like that. Although I guess there might be some carryover skills from like being on camera on YouTube and orating and things like that. Man, that would be awesome. I would love that. I would love that. I don't. Um, it it would kind of be like we'll see how this goes, because if I'm the one acting as the news anchor, I'm not necessarily the one writing. So there's
Hmm.
this interesting merger of like people always talk about like great actors like Heath Ledger's Joker, for example. But what does that look like without the writing and the people who are like helping build that character? There's a collaboration there. So, but that would be awesome. I would do that in a heartbeat.
And that, well, actually, I guess I'll just follow up on that before I pitch the next one.
assuming
Like,
assuming I had infinite time, that saying that, like, I'm like, you
yeah,
know what I mean, like I'm taking all of these hypotheticals as like I have infinite time. It's not going to take, because YouTube takes quite a bit of time.
100%. Well, and let's even just say let's say you did have a show in Cyberpunk. 'Cause, I mean, you've analyzed the different, probably maybe more than anyone else, the different programs, the TV shows, the news, whatever. If and I'm putting you on the spot here, maybe nothing jumps to mind. If not, I can go to the next thing. But like, is there a show, whether it be, I mean, I pitched the news idea, but whether it be like television program, fictional within the universe, or a news program, is there like an angle that you would like, your show within
Oh,
Cyberpunk to cover?
doing a sort of doing a parallel to like the podcast world
Hmm.
would be really fun to work on, because that's something I think I have a good amount of experience ingesting. And there's all of Cyberpunk's stuff is I made a community post about this recently because some of the comments in my Cyberpunk videos and just the comments on Cyberpunk, the broader community understanding of Cyberpunk, I contest with a lot, with how people interpret some of the things that they're seeing. It's like it's sometimes as if people don't realize how intentional the world is. Like they see things happening and they're like, it's just like our world. Whoa. And it's like, well, it was written that way. Like that they did that on purpose. You're seeing things that are parallels to like contemporary America and Western culture because they wrote it that way. It's social commentary. That's the whole point of it. And I think there would be a lot of fun to be had. Like off the top of my head, it would be because you have all the different cyberpunk shows, and there's like the finance show, and the that's like a Jim Cramer, I think that's his name, Jim
Yeah, yeah,
Cramer
yeah, yeah, yeah.
spoof. And then you have the different news shows, like Jillian Jordan on N54 is kind of like loosely. This is like I'm oversimplifying, but it's loosely like Fox News, and then Arasaka's news is like CNN, kind of set up with WNS. Um, I think there's a little gap there for like a whatever one you want to do, a Joe Rogan, an Alex Jones, a whoever that you could slide in there. I don't look enough like those guys, so maybe I'm not the ideal like actor, but you could have some fun social commentary doing something that's like a spin on that because it's such a relevant part of like modern media consumption.
I mean, absolutely, and I think that's an amazing idea. I would love to see that. Hopefully, with infinite, let's find the infinite time glitch and let's make it happen is what I think.
Mhm.
Well, you mentioned that I mean, earlier in the conversation that you've gotten the source books and you kind of dig through the lore, and that's also in your videos. Going through data shards or different things. If
Mhm.
maybe it wouldn't be cyberpunk because there's so much lore within it, but like let's say someone's starting a brand new universe from scratch and they come to you and they're like, all right, Gavin, we want to figure out the lore for this universe. Would you want to be like a lore writer for a game? Would that be fun?
With the infinite time, I would like to take my hand at it because it's something that I've spent a lot of time observing as like the outside party. It would be really new for me though to start writing on its own. But yeah, that would be time consuming. That would be cool to do. And I think the best approach to that from every single world that I have seen kind of speak to me is one that draws very heavily upon our world. I feel like if you don't do that, I don't know, maybe it's just me personally, but
Hmm.
what is your world saying? What are you grabbing from? Because it has to be able to resonate with people. So if you're not grabbing, a good example, another example of this, another game that obviously resonates with me is New Vegas. Like that game takes so much from the real world. Its map is literally built on geodata, just shrunken down. The characters in the world, the NCR is an analogous sort of version on modern day US, at least at that time, or pulling from a more recent era with everything going on with them. And then you have Caesar's Legion, which is obviously drawing from like Roman society and things like that, and in like twisted spins on it. These aren't perfect parallels. And then Mr. House is this sort of what's his name? I'm forgetting his name. Howard Hughes
Oh
is maybe
yeah,
who I'm
yeah,
thinking
yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like the world, the characters, the writing, the themes, they're all very familiar. Like they speak to people. So many people resonate with that game because it's drawing from something real and recognizable. It's not just like this sounds cool to me and 13 headed dragons and this and that. Like it finds something grounded and then builds upon it. That would be something that would I know I think I've read that Mike Pondsmith and the guys behind writing the Cyberpunk source books, I think I've heard him literally say in an interview, like they spend a ton of time doing research on specific topics that they're writing about in their worlds. Like they try and understand how things actually work in our world to then write about them. Even if you don't end up using that information, it's just beneficial to get an understanding of something before you get into it.
And then, I guess I mentioned this a bit earlier, and it didn't seem like something you would leap at, but I'm curious. I'll throw it out to you. If someone came to you and they're like, we want you to be a game director, we want you to like make, to take on the overlord role of a game. Is that something of interest to you?
No, no. No, no shot. I mean, if you just want to watch a ship crash and burn, that's like asking on an even greater level. That's like asking somebody who's never worked in a restaurant if they want to be the general manager. Like if you think your general manager was bad or he was tough or he was uncaring or all this kind of stuff, like nothing can nothing can destroy something quicker than putting somebody who doesn't know what they're doing at like the most influential spot where they're responsible for a bunch of other people. I've listened to a good amount of interviews recently of Josh Sawyer, who is the
Mm,
game director for New Vegas, and he
yeah.
still works at Obsidian. I think he's in charge of the upcoming Obsidian Fallout. So he's going to be the game director. And sometimes you just listen to somebody who's been in these positions and you realize like I would need a lot of experience before I could be in that position. Otherwise, I will just end up making too many mistakes and it will hurt other people in the process. So no, I wouldn't do that. I think you have to know your limitations, and I would have to go through many different roles under a game director before I was ever able to be a game director.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll ask this one because I try to ask this to everyone in the gaming sphere I meet because I get such different answers and I'm interested every time. Is there a historical era you would most like to get a Red Dead 2 for?
Mm. A historical era I would most like to get a Red Dead 2 for. A historical era. And what haven't we got?
Is like I can expand on what I mean by that if you'd like, or I can give like examples other
Go
people
ahead,
have
because
said.
I'm gonna listen to you, but I'm also gonna try and
Sure.
think of one. Yeah.
So I think that the kind of the genesis of that question for me is like I think it's such like an interesting, nuanced, satirical view of a historical era that also like puts you in the shoes about like what is it like to do XYZ in this time period in a very kind of mundane way, but also there's the ups and downs of it. So like the thing I took from that is like I would love to see, that in like I played Assassin's Creed Shadows and I like that game, but like it's not at the same level in terms of, just
Right.
kind of like if I would love to see like a samurai Red Dead 2 or whatever. So I guess I'm just curious, is there an era, time period? It could be recent, could maybe it's even in the future, could be a part of the world, could be anything that you just would love to see like the
Yeah.
day-to-day life of.
Yeah. I think it would be something like, because sometimes if you find some sort of a piece of media that is about a topic you don't really know a lot about, and then it does it faithfully, it can like invigorate a real interest or understanding of that space, and then you go and do more research and you just kind of like that thing. Cyberpunk is a good example of that, even though it's not historical. I i haven't even seen the original Blade Runner. I've seen Blade Runner 2049 I think twice. I love that movie. I need to go watch the OG Blade Runner.
So good.
Haven't seen
Yeah.
it though. Um but it's that game that sort of like opened me up into that space. If I had to pick one, there's many you could go for, but I would like Aztec
Hmm.
society. Like, give me that. I want a team to go all in because we have such a limited understanding of. I'm saying like the average person probably has a very limited understanding of what Aztec society was like. You hear like bits and bobs here and there, um, but something like that, like Mayan, Aztec, something like that, where it's like there's from my outsider view, it's like they're in my limited knowledge, it's like there was a lot more of a society there in cities and things going on that most Americans probably don't have a full grasp on, or undercut, or think it was much smaller. And from the bits and pieces I've gathered, it seems like it was a lot bigger and a lot more expansive than we might realize. And I think it would be cool to see something like that. Like, give me that. Give me Aztec Red Dead Redemption 2. I don't know what you would call it.
I love it. Oh gosh, what's the phrasing I'm looking for? You know, I think I mentioned we would circle back to the cyberpunk prison thing, and I think now is maybe the best time. I One of the really interesting aspects of that to me, and it felt like something new to your channel. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. It felt like what you were trying to do in that was sort of like almost expanding on the lore of Cyberpunk, or kind of trying to focus on things that are maybe alluded to but not thoroughly examined in the game, and then writing your own scenario within that. And I guess, well, and maybe I don't know, maybe that doesn't bear a resemblance to how you think about it, I don't know, but when I don't totally know how to phrase this question, but I guess I'm just wondering, like, how do you decide, what parts of a game universe that you want to flesh out? Is it like something that hasn't been covered elsewhere? Is it something that you just really want to write a story within? I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, there's a couple elements to that. It's I'll do I am aware of the space enough to generally know like what's been done to death and what hasn't been done. And Cyberpunk is one of those. I hate to give this out for selfish reasons, but there is a lot of stuff in Cyberpunk that has not been explored because of
Mm,
those source books. And one of the challenges to that is there's that. I was just walking around Cyberpunk, like, what do I want to do for a video? I have a list of ideas, but that like every time I make a new video, and if something works or if it doesn't, that can reframe what that list means to me. And then new ideas will sort of spawn from that. So the list is more of like a brain exercise than something I'm actually going to consistently pull from. And yeah, I was just walking around in Night City. I saw that prison. I'm like, yeah, there's a prison here. I've seen this a couple times. It's this huge tower right outside of like the really dense urban space in Night City. And the game doesn't really use it. Why does it not use it? And then I started looking inside of it. I had been in it a couple other times getting like B-roll footage for other videos. I'm like, there's just like this whole space here. There's prisoners in here. It's not finished. There's like some people floating in the ground. There's guards. So a couple of people noticed in that there's like one of the robot guards is smoking a cigarette, which doesn't really make sense. Um, I saw prisoners like pulling out laptops and stuff like that. Like it's not finished, it's incomplete. And then I'm like, okay, there's a prison here. So then I go and I start looking up like Night City Prison. Was this used in a quest I missed or forgot about? No, not really. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's check the source books. What's in the source books on prisons? Because CDPR probably had some ideas for this space. It got cut. And lo and behold, there's like multiple long sections in multiple source books that have information on the prison system. And then you just start going from there. And I essentially just took because Cyberpunk changes, and it's been I think the Cyberpunk 2013 came out in the 80s, and then there's multiple editions of each book, and then there's add-ons to each source book. So it's like the information can get really wild, and sometimes it contradicts itself, or it just changes, like any world would change over 70 plus years. Um, yeah, and a lot of the information came out of that, and then the next step is how do I visualize stuff that is not in the game, which is like that was and sometimes like you make I start making a video and I'm like, okay, I can easily show this to the viewer. The Fallout Roads videos are perfect examples of that. This is not hard to show. You just show what's in the game. But with the Cyberpunk prison stuff, it's like I have one area of the map and it's not used. How do you show that? How do I show this to the viewer? So then you get into all the other like the Bill character and trying to trail people along through what the experience would be like. Yeah.
oh gosh, sorry. My voice is like starting to go here, so I might have to get down to the last couple questions. Not because I don't love talking to you. It's just like
I hear you.
I talk so little in my daily life that like interviews are a bit of an endurance thing for me. But you know, I would be remiss if I didn't touch on this. I think there are certain common themes throughout your work, or certain things that you seem particularly interested in examining. Transportation networks,
Mhm.
quality of life, entertainment, and what it says about in-game entertainment and what it says about the universe. And I want to break that down a little bit, because I have to, and maybe I'm oversimplifying this, or maybe I'm drawing a line that doesn't exist, but I have to put myself in your shoes, and I think about, okay, so Gavin spent a lot of time, you know, driving to the airport, walking from his car to the airport, taking the tram, going to work, doing it in reverse. And I have to imagine, like, in that time period, were you thinking about like there has to be a better transportation system here. And is that kind of where that interest sparked?
That's like a neat packaging, and I would like to say yes, but no, I wasn't thinking about that at all. It was just like, it was more like maybe the younger brained me would have interfaced with video games of like, this is just what is. I'm not going to be able to change this. I don't know. Like, yeah, there were probably points early on where I was thinking, like, man, it'd be nice to be back in the employee parking, because something I left out about that was that we were right next to pre-check TSA and employee parking, which meant we could just very easily pass through that and then get on the rail system instead of running through the parking lot, and like I'm walking on areas I shouldn't be walking on. Um, yeah, the transportation stuff in the games, like my favorite instance of that, and it's probably one of the worst videos on the channel, is the New Vegas Railroad video, because it was a discovery that there is this whole intentional system that I had not noticed in like probably over 15 years of playing that game. That's kind of like, it's like looking at stuff that is very intentional from the developers. It seems to be, at least. And with New Vegas, it definitely was. It's tied into the story in some of the beats for those who care about New Vegas enough. It's like the railroad runs by a quarry in Sloan. It's a little town. And then it goes to Boulder City, where there's this concrete mixing plant. This is not like put in your face much at all. But then the NCR is responsible for this. It comes from California. You can follow the railroad all the way outside of the map past Prim, which goes into California. And then it leads past all of the different areas where the NCR has built up infrastructure. So they put the walls around Camp McCarran, and then you have the Crimson Caravan, which is like or within the NCR, and they have walls around their area. And these walls were not pre-war, and that's something that never entered my mind before. I was like, oh, there's just like these walls in this area, and then you think like, wait a minute, no, that's an airport. There wouldn't be walls around an airport. The planes would be crashing every time they ran into them. So they thought about putting up this railroad that was connected to infrastructure that was repurposed in the post-war in the world, and then used to like subtly explain why they have built walls and have different elements of infrastructure. It's also connected to them like patching up the Hoover Dam and reusing it. And I'm like, I saw that and I was like, oh my God. Like, no, I guarantee you nobody, like almost nobody has thought about this. The only reason I'm looking at it is because I'm just like, this might make a good video. I'll follow the train tracks around and see what it does. And then I'm like, holy shit, like why did they think about this? And then it's not really overtly stated throughout the game, but you can see the way they put the world together was really intentional. That's why I like that. Yeah.
Oh, God, that's so awesome. I I think I mentioned this maybe in my outreach, or if not, I'll mention it now. I think one of the really interesting things about examining video games in this amount of detail, because like I think there are a lot of people who will how do I phrase this? Like people will hear that answer just now, and then that will make them think about like infrastructure, which maybe they hadn't thought about previously, because they might be interested in New Vegas but couldn't give a shit about urban planning. So like I think it's
Right.
so amazing that you and you're making these videos and all this stuff, because I really think it encourages people to not only think about video games in a different way, but think about their day-to-day life and their environments in a different way. And I think one of
Hmm.
the best examples of that to me, and I've circled around it a couple times, and I'd love to dive into it now, is the especially the cyberpunk news and TV videos. Maybe those are maybe my two favorite videos you've done. And I guess I'm just wondering, like, was there I guess maybe I'm asking this in a crass way, but like, was there a political motivation there in terms of like wanting to encourage people to question like media bias and all of these different things? Because it feels like a very well thought out examination of like, hey, here's the people who are funding these media corporations, and here's the
Hmm.
the coverage they're putting out. It feels like a pretty good primer, honestly, on like media literacy.
Yeah, it's not so much a political push, it is critical thinking, I think, more so. I think a lot of people can, like, one, those shows and news shows, the two separate things. I think they might be limited on consoles. So I'm not even sure how much people have seen them. And beyond that, who is going into a game and like sitting down and watching a TV? This is not like common behavior of the vast majority of players. So there's the element of like bringing to light some of the work that was put into that game, which is a shit ton of work put into those different TV shows and the news channels and the news shows. Um, but then also looking a bit further, like you could kind of take some of those shows and be like haha funny, okay, it's like cyberpunk-esque. But again, beating a dead horse with this, but like the stuff done in games, not always, but in these cases, the videos you're talking about is very intentional what they're doing here. And then you can also sort of extrapolate your own stories from them or like build upon the ideas. But there's just a layer of like critical thinking about what you're seeing, what's being put in front of you. Not only can you use that critical thinking when inspecting those shows, but I feel like they are like what's the word to say, what's the way to say it, like they're kind of like guides into critical thinking. Like they offer up very, what I think is very simple layups that you can then take and apply to the other shows you're watching, whether that be TV shows or podcasts or cartoons in some of the cases. Like they kind of, it's weird what they did when making those shows or why they made them, but they like offer not overly simple, but like pretty simple guides into like critical thinking and media literacy if you pay attention to them, and like what is it doing, and then you can take that and apply it out into the real world. I think, I hope.
No, I mean, I absolutely think you can, and that was, yeah, I'm so grateful to hear your answer on that because I think it's such an interesting part of it that people who just watch the videos might not realize all of the intention and motivation and thinking that you put into it, or so
CDPR put into it. I'm just noticing it, but they put like, right, like the writers and the people who made that, they put that thought into it, and then I'm just, all I'm really doing is looking at it and trying to interpret what I'm seeing. So I think it's pretty important to like stay focused on that and not try and push people to think in one
mm,
particular direction about it. I mean, that
mm,
I'm not going to be perfect in that. Like your own, like no, anybody who says they're not biased is just like they're not. Okay, yeah, like you, that's fine. I get what you're trying to say, but that does not exist. Um, and that like
but
I'm
I
trying to
get what you
just
mean,
like,
yeah. The
yeah.
intention is just to, from what I'm hearing, the intention is just to make people think about like, hey, here are some things to consider and do with this what you will, you know?
I'm not dodging like what it's trying to say. I'm just trying. I'm not trying to
Mm,
put my own politics
mm,
into it. I'm trying to extract what the game is
mm.
saying, and my own thoughts about the world are going to bleed into that,
Yeah, no, I mean,
undoubtedly.
I think you phrased it eloquently, both, in the videos and now. I think I'll probably try to wrap this up in a bit, and I guess whichever question feels like the end of the interview, I'll just cut the interview at that point. But um, you mentioned that you think it's important, or maybe it's a bad way to phrase it, but like you really enjoy games that are commenting on the real world or feel like they're based in human reality or whatever it is. I don't recall your exact wording, and I
Hmm.
I'm I'm curious. I think I think I don't know the exact numbers, but I would say most of your videos focus on Fallout and then to a lesser extent Skyrim, Cyberpunk, and then GTA. I think those are probably the main ones. I'm I'm wondering, are those like the definitive universes that you love exploring, or are there a bunch of other games that you're like, oh man, if I knew people were gonna watch this, I would love to do a video on this.
Yeah, yeah. I made a video on out of bounds areas in Modern Warfare 2, 2009. It bombed horrendously, which in hindsight was a bit of a packaging issue. I've slowly been trying to get my packaging together,
Hmm.
which just means like thumbnails
Yeah,
and
yeah,
titles
yeah.
and things like that. There was a time where I wasn't showing my face on YouTube, which was a huge mistake in hindsight because now I am, and I won't put my face in any thumbnails that I wasn't physically shown in,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. But
Yeah, yeah,
now
yeah.
I'm trying to bring all that together. And since then, that video has recovered. Um, quite a bit. Like it looked like it might not ever break like 30,000 views, but now it's getting closer to 100,000, and it's growing well ever since I got that in order. So yeah, those aren't the only games I'm interested in for sure, but there's a couple things at play there. One, it takes time to understand a world enough. I feel like that you need to make a video about it. So I don't just want to like start playing something and then make a video about it. That's how you make a whole lot of mistakes. I did that with the I made an Oblivion video. It's terrible because I didn't play it enough. I didn't play the game. I didn't understand the game enough. So it's like it might pass is okay, but I don't think I understood the video or the game enough to do what I wanted to do. Like some people don't, they might not need that for the video they're trying to make. So that kind of limits me. And then there's obviously like, I think I'm in the path right now of building the channel to a point, and then it's like, we'll slowly branch out to a different game. And a part of that will be me slowly branching out into that game and understanding it more. But then it will also be like, let's see how far I can take the audience with me into different realms. Who knows how YouTube plays out. Like the truth is, as I get older, I play games less. And it's not that I'm necessarily less interested in them, but there's more things in my life that are taking up interest. And this is more of like a 5-10 year kind of vision, but it's like, where do we take this eventually? Will I be talking about video games for my entire time on YouTube? I'm almost at the point where I'm playing video games just to talk about other things that aren't directly related to the video games already. So eventually, maybe we don't stay just within games. We'll see.
I do have to ask, and maybe nothing jumps out or you don't want to say, but like I'm curious what the games are that you would love to explore, and you're welcome to keep it under wraps if you don't want to share, but I would love to hear if you're willing to.
Yeah, I like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I've played a bit of that. I run a lot, and music is really involved with my running. And I moved late last year, and I was just started playing Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I haven't played it since then much, but the soundtrack is incredible, and I was listening to it while I was running around. I know that game's soundtrack better than I do the game, but that's one that I would love to explore more. And I had plans to explore it because I'm like, nobody's really touched on this game. And then all of a sudden, Bandicoot and I think Austin made a video on it, and I'm like, damn it, like we're putzing around. We should have got over to that one. Yeah, that's on the top of the list. And then there's like older games. I feel like I like just the warmth in my heart of nostalgia that I get from like old Pokemon games, Sleeping Dogs, which I made one video on. Yeah, I would love to go back into the Far Cries, Far Cry 3. Going back into the older stuff. That Dying Light is another one. I'm just looking at my Steam library briefly. BioShock, these kind of games. I'd love to go back and look at those. But there's sort of like the double-edged sword of what am I going to make in those games, and will it perform on YouTube? Because I'm not super interested in crashing the channel, to be honest. Like there is a danger in that. Like you I would love to be like, I just make what I want to make. Yes, that is true, but I am angled. You're guided. Like Cyberpunk gets views. I also really like Cyberpunk. But there's an attraction towards that, whereas like I might want to make a video on, I don't know, you know, Hades. Have you ever heard of Hades?
Yeah,
Like Hades is
yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah.
I love Hades. I'm not super drawn to make a video about it, but it's a good example of one where it's like, I don't think that would perform well, not within my niche, not within my audience. And then you release that and your subscribers and viewers don't watch it. And then YouTube goes, okay, well, we're just going to really shrink how much we show this to people. And you can end up hurting your channel a bit. And I know I'm not at the size where I'm like, I can just do whatever I want and it'll perform.
I mean, I think that's such an how do I describe this? That's one of the things that I've learned from interviewing YouTubers much more so than doing YouTube, because Lord knows I like in terms of, well, okay, I won't go on the whole thing, but I do think it's an interesting thing, right? Because like we all have interests and everything beyond just what is on our channels and what is algorithmically most relevant. But like
Mm-hmm.
also the other side of it is like, well, okay, if you want to make a living at this, you kind of have to have a certain degree of being of service to the audience and saying like, okay, I guess I'll just focus on the 20, 30, 40% of my personality, interest, whatever that fits into what they are what they are into. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like over time, you can kind of nudge things and then well, I guess I'll take us on that route. I I wrote this down as a totally kind of out there question, but I'm curious about it. You do seem like you're very, very interested in the world and how different people and different cultures view things. And would you be interested in making, let's say, like documentaries on how like different countries produce games or that kind of thing? Like, would you be interested in that kind of thing?
That would be so cool. Yeah, that would be really cool. I like this isn't like that, but what you made me think. Have you ever heard of the channel Bald and Bankrupt?
No, no. Tell me about it.
Oh, I kind of have like this what's his space? I was thinking of like a couple YouTubers. He just travels places. I wish I could make videos like him because he's um that's a weird thing to say, like, yeah, then just go do it. But I think his story is he was bankrupt. That was the point. Like he had to file for bankruptcy. He wasn't
But he
doing
had a
well,
lot
and
of
then just
hair.
it maybe at the time, yeah. and and then he has this ability to go places. He goes to risky places. He does
Hmm.
very, very dangerous, difficult things at times. He goes into countries that, like, being a tall white dude is maybe not the smartest decision, but he makes it work. Um, and there's just this element of like being taken on a journey with him that I like to try and get going in some of my videos, but it's not the same as if like he like followed the trail that like uh, refugees and people coming from like South and Central America take through the Amazon rainforest to get up to the southern border of the US. Like
Wow.
incredibly dangerous. He goes all over the place. Really, really good videos. And they're minimalistic. They're not like heavily edited. He's just existing and doing things, and it's the moments that make the video, not the editing, not the script writing. He doesn't have a script. He might script occasional monologues here and there, but it's mainly just like impromptu stuff. So when you mention like going to different countries, but that would be a different element of like how do different countries make games. That would be interesting. That's not on the forefront of my ideal list, though. I would say that's not. Yeah, I don't know. That would be something that I would think about more. It's a cool idea, but no.
One of the things I I think we circled around maybe similar ideas or this idea previously, and I would love to put a finer point in it. I I guess my hypothesis is it seems like in the 20 teens, early 2020s, whatever, there was a uh kind of a glut of irony online. It was a lot of people who were just like, whatever, man, I don't care about anything, just people being very cynical and like insincere and all this stuff. And I think I think the success of you and Bandercoot and Austin and other people that's just within this one niche, but I think it's
Mhm.
true for other things as well. It seems to me that like irony as a driving force of art, content, whatever is dead or at least dying, and it seems that like earnestness is becoming the kind of the king of content or whatever. And I guess I'm just wondering
Mm.
if you think there's anything to that and how you might view your role in it. I know I guess I'm actually taking sort of an analytical view of yourself, which is maybe strange, but I would love to hear
No,
about that.
no, I don't think that's strange. I think, yeah, earnestness over a sort of like edgy nihilism type. Is that what you're contrasting it against? Um,
Uh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think you could. There are different examples or things you could put of, but sure. Yeah. I think that could be a good counterbalance.
showing showing that you care about something or that you're willing to be
Well,
interested. There's a sort of vulnerability in showing that you are interested in a thing that might be niche, might be strange.
I I think that's definitely a part of it, and I'll even circle it back to something you said earlier, right? Like I think you said something to the effect of, and I don't remember exactly, but something to the effect of, like oh, if I do it wrong, if I do it this way, or if I don't get it exactly right, it'll be super cringe. And like,
Hmm.
I think it used to be, it seems to me that the worst thing you could be was cringe. And now it's like, I don't know if certainly I don't know if people are trying to be or whatever, but like it seems like people have almost gotten over the fear of being cringe, is what it seems like to me. And I
Yeah.
don't know how to say this as a question, so I'm hoping you have
No, I
thoughts
get
on
what you're
this.
going at. Yeah, yeah. No, I get what you're. I get what you're going at. I'm not over the idea of being cringe, but so there's a couple of routes to go on this. Number one, like doing YouTube and talking about these things is not something that I am willing. I was talking to Bandicoot about this in particular when we first started talking. It's like how do you tell other people in your life I'm doing YouTube? Like I have a wife, so I have uh, parents, in-laws. How, this is I just told them for the first time. They were visiting us recently because we moved further away, and I was just telling them like because they had known I was doing something. It was I was sort of like on my own, have my own business, which is like technically true on the back end of YouTube. You get certain things established for tax reasons and stuff like that. Um, but they didn't know. My own family like doesn't like I'm making money from this. This is my full-time thing. They don't know. And that's just because I'm like most of my close friends. I have one close friend who I've told. And it's not like they're asking and I'm like dodging. I just like as long as they're not asking, I'm not pushing to tell them. So the idea that it's like internet facing for some reason to like, a bunch of strangers, I'm pretty comfortable, especially at this point, going into these weird spaces. And there's like an inherent vulnerability there, putting yourself out there. But on the personal end, to be completely honest, I'm still not there. I don't want to have like conversations with people in my day-to-day life. Like I make YouTube games. Like that's terrifying to me. That's one of the scariest things imaginable. I can't think of anything that is like outside of like more like
Yeah,
health things.
yeah, yeah.
I can't think of something that I less want to engage with. There were a couple interactions. Like I got sponsored by ZocDoc, and I made appointments through ZocDoc, and then I go to the doctors, and they're like, "How did you find us?" And I made myself as like an exercise. I made myself tell them exact like word for word exactly what happened. Like I make YouTube videos, and I was sponsored by ZocDoc, and I made an appointment with you through them, which is always and you get different reactions from that. Like what are you even talking about? To oh that's really cool and stuff like that. But yeah, I hope I got somewhere on your question.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess this, I asked this was my last question, my last interview, so I guess technically I'm double dipping, but I think it is interesting, and I think there's a wide range of different answers. I what's the phrasing I'm looking for? I find that comment sections, and I've gotten this to a tiny degree because I'm such a small channel. Like I don't have I don't get thousands of comments on my videos or anything, but I find that comment sections are sort of a blurry reflection of the creators themselves to a certain degree. And
Mm.
I guess what are your favorite comments to receive? Like I imagine that you're probably not at a stage anymore where you're reading every single comment like I am, but like what to the extent that you see your comments, what are the ones that you enjoy, that make you happy, that make you laugh? Yeah, what are your favorite ones to get?
Um, Speaking to that addictive tendency, I do read every comment I get. I'm sort of like obsessive about the back end and the analytics of the YouTube channel, especially now where I'm like, I don't think I fully understand what makes YouTube tick. I'm getting there, but I'm still putting that together. So on one end, it's important for me to do, and on the other end, I'm obsessed with looking at that stuff and looking at comments and stuff. So if people comment on my videos, just know there's like a 100% chance I'm reading it, unless it's like I don't get on the YouTube Studio app, I don't get all the replies to other people's comments, so I don't see that. What are my favorite to get? Hmm. I like when people see this is kind of tough because I'm actively um, sort of combative or fighting with this in my mind more so. I'm trying to stay out of comment sections more and not argue or like overly engage too much, because that's just you going down far rabbit holes there, um, or deep rabbit holes there. But I like when the content makes people think, and then they just start talking and saying things about the content, and it's not like this content was good. You make such good like that. It's not that that doesn't mean anything to me. That sounds shitty to say, but at
I
a
know what you
certain
mean.
point, you see a lot of it, and then there's a level of like, I don't know if this person is saying this because they mean it or because they want me to heart their comment or say something, because it's like if I upload the video and then within like it's a 35-minute video and then within 4 minutes it's like amazing video. It's like I appreciate the positivity, I really do, but that's that's not going to be above when it seems like somebody is engaging with the content and that's making them think. But and maybe this is kind of my fault as the content creator. There are times, especially with the cyberpunk content, where I feel like people are not, and this isn't everybody, there are a lot that are, but there are people who are just really not picking up what the game or the video is putting down. They're not going to the next level. And that's something to any viewers of the videos that are seeing this, I'm challenging you to go to the next level with the material. Some of it is really surface level. And that's not just my comment section. I notice this of just about every comment section on the internet, that people will see something happening, and you see this especially with shorts, where the short is trying to guide a particular narrative about this person being good or this person being shitty or why would they do this. And then the comment section is just like, maybe it is half bots just saying like the most predictable thing about that. And it's like I would like to see an evolution of that. Like the internet, I feel like I've been a part of the internet for a very long time. The sort of inception of very early YouTube, and it was just like I remember the time where it was like everybody making like Call of Duty commentary, those the C Nanners and Hutch and all of these. And you watched, I feel like I've watched the internet kind of grow up, but now as more generations enter the space, we go backwards a little bit. Like a younger group comes in, and it's just like a surface level engagement with some of the content, and I would like to see that get a little bit better, because sometimes it's less so in my comment sections, because my everyone commenting on my videos, they're amazing, but outside of that, yeah, it's just like, oh man, it's disappointing. I wish I had a better. I'll try and use this example. I touched on it a little bit earlier. um Cyberpunk. When people talk about cyberpunk, I said this, I'll try and not completely just repeat it, but
No, you're doing great.
yeah, the when people see what cyberpunk is presenting them, and they say this is just like our world, or our world is even worse, which is like, I don't, we're being really hyperbolic to the point where it's like we're struggling to have a conversation here. If you know the material, and at least in like Cyberpunk 2077, our world is not. Can we got to meet some common ground here. Our world is not that bad. That's the whole point of that. Maybe there's moments here and there where you could find it, but generally speaking, the whole idea of like this fictional universe is that it's much of our world turned up to 10. It's like a major element of it. So when I see a lot of comments being like, there were comments on the Cyberpunk Prisons video that were just like, oh, standard American prison system, I see. And I get there's some jokes in that, and that's fine. But also no. There's like, if you watch the Cyberpunk Prisons video and you see what the universe is doing to prisoners, it's horrifying. And it is not like we don't even have the technology to be doing that to people in our world. So there's this like bit of an overlap where people want to push a narrative. They have this certain narrative. Humans are very narrative creatures, not logic first. We're narrative. We like story. And that's one of the reasons I like making YouTube videos so much. But on the same note, we got to relax that a little bit, because I feel like people miss stuff from the media they're consuming because of that.
Thank you very much for checking out the interview with Gavin. Lots of cool stuff coming up here on the channel in the near future. If you want to stick around and see it, I hope you will subscribe.
yeah, comment any thoughts you have. I'd be interested in hearing your perspectives. All right, keep on rocking.